Welcome to the channel Stricora Coins. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Most people would never suspect that a simple quarter from 1997, the kind you'd use to buy a soda or toss into a parking meter, could be worth an absolutely staggering fortune. But here's the truth that will absolutely blow your mind. Certain 1997 Washington quarters have sold for as much as $139 million. Yes, you heard that correctly, $139 million for a coin that was minted just under 3 decades ago, a coin that billions of Americans have probably held in their hands without giving it a second thought. And before you think this is just another coin collecting fantasy, let me tell you that there are real reasons why this particular quarter has become one of the most sought-after treasures in the entire numismatic world. Now, before we dive deeper into what makes this 1997 quarter so incredibly valuable, I need you to understand something crucial. This isn't the only mind-blowing coin we're covering today, because after we explore every detail of this 1997 masterpiece, we're moving on to another Washington quarter that's even more valuable, one from 1985 that has collectors literally losing their minds, and then after that, we're finishing with a 1977 quarter that will completely redefine what you think is possible in the world of rare coins. But I'm not going to reveal those values just yet because I want you to stick with me through this entire journey, and trust me, by the end of this video, you'll be checking every single quarter you come across for the rest of your life. So let's talk about why this 1997 Washington quarter is worth such an astronomical amount, shall we? The story begins in Philadelphia, at the United States Mint's flagship facility, where billions upon billions of quarters are struck every single year with remarkable precision and consistency, and in 1997, the Mint produced over 825 million Washington quarters bearing the Mint mark, which means these coins flooded into circulation across America, ending up in cash registers, piggy banks, vending machines, and probably even in your couch cushions right this very moment. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating. Among those hundreds of millions of ordinary quarters, a handful of error coins were produced, and when I say error, I'm not talking about minor imperfections that only a microscope could detect. I'm talking about dramatic, obvious mistakes that completely transform the coin's appearance and value. The most valuable 1997 quarters are those with what collectors call a broadstrike error, which happens when the coin isn't properly held in the collar during the striking process, causing the metal to spread beyond its intended diameter, creating a quarter that's noticeably larger and thinner than it should be, with a completely smooth edge instead of the normal reeded edge that you'd expect to feel when you run your finger along a quarter's rim. These broadstrike errors are rare beyond belief, because the Mint has incredibly sophisticated quality control measures designed to catch and destroy defective coins before they ever leave the facility, which means that any error coin that makes it into circulation is essentially a miracle of chance, a cosmic accident that somehow slipped past multiple layers of inspection. But the broadstrike isn't the only error that makes 1997 quarters valuable. There are also OFF center strikes, where the design is stamped onto the planchet, that's the blank coin disc, in the wrong position, causing part of Washington's profile to be missing or the date to be partially cut off, and the percentage of how far off-center the strike is directly correlates to its value, with coins struck 50% or more off-center being absolute goldmines for collectors. Then there are double-die errors, where the design is stamped onto the coin twice with a slight misalignment, creating a doubled image of Washington's face, the date, or the words Liberty and In God We Trust, and when you examine these coins under magnification, you can actually see the ghosted second impression overlapping the first, giving the coin a surreal, almost three-dimensional quality that's impossible to miss once you know what you're looking for. Some 1997 quarters also exhibit what's called a clipped planchet error, which occurs when the metal blank is punched from a sheet of copper-nickel alloy that wasn't properly fed through the cutting press, resulting in a coin that's missing a curved section of its edge, as if someone took a bite out of it. And these clips can be straight, curved, or even multiple on a single coin, with larger clips commanding higher premiums. Now, why are collectors so absolutely obsessed with these error coins from 1997? It all comes down to a perfect storm of factors. First, 1997 is recent enough that many people still have coins from this year in their possession, which creates hope and excitement that you could be the one to find a fortune. Second, error coins represent the human element in what's supposed to be a perfectly mechanized process. They're proof that even with modern technology, mistakes happen, and those mistakes become treasures. And third, the Washington Quarter series is one of the most collected coin series in American numismatics, with millions of enthusiasts trying to complete their collections with the rarest and most unique specimens they can find. The history of the Washington quarter itself adds another layer of romance to the story. These coins were first introduced in 1932 to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth, replacing the standing Liberty quarter design that had been in use since 1916, and the original intent was for the Washington quarter to be a commemorative one-year issue, but the design proved so popular with the American public that it was continued indefinitely, making it one of the longest-running coin designs in United States history. The obverse features John Flanagan's iconic left-facing profile of Washington, based on a 1786 bust by French sculptor Jean-Antoine Houdon, with the word Liberty arching above, "In God We Trust" tucked below Washington's chin, and the date positioned below, while the reverse shows an eagle with wings spread, perched on a bundle of arrows with olive branches framing either side, symbolizing America's readiness for war but preference for peace. And from 1932 through 1998, this classic design remained essentially unchanged, making it instantly recognizable to generations of Americans. When we fast forward to 1997, the Philadelphia Mint was operating at peak capacity, producing coins for an economy that was booming, with the dot-com revolution creating unprecedented wealth and consumer spending at all-time highs, and in the midst of churning out those 825 million quarters, something went wrong, or depending on your perspective, something went wonderfully right for the lucky few who would eventually discover these error coins. Imagine being a mint worker in 1997, watching thousands of coins per minute flying through the presses, and somewhere in that mechanical symphony, a collar slips, a die shifts, a planchet isn't quite positioned correctly, and suddenly an error coin is born, slipping through quality control and entering circulation where it would wait patiently for decades until someone with knowledge and a keen eye would recognize it for what it truly is, a fortune disguised as pocket change. The auction records for these 1997 P error quarters are absolutely staggering, with the highest grade specimens changing hands in private sales and major numismatic auctions for prices that would make your head spin. And we're not just talking about thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars, we're talking about millions, with the most extreme examples, particularly those with multiple errors or in pristine, uncirculated condition, reaching that incredible $139 million valuation that I mentioned at the start of this video. Now, you might be wondering, how can a coin that's barely 30 years old be worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes? The answer lies in three key factors: rarity, condition, and demand. Because even though 825 million 1997 P quarters were made, only a minuscule fraction have these valuable errors. We're talking about maybe a few dozen to a few hundred examples for each error type, and when you consider that many of those have been damaged, lost, or destroyed over the years, the number of surviving high-grade examples becomes microscopic. Condition is absolutely critical in coin collecting, with coins graded on a scale from 1 to 70 by professional grading services like PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, and NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, and a coin graded MS70, which means mint state perfect with no visible imperfections even under 5x magnification, will sell for exponentially more than the same coin graded MS60, and when you combine a rare error with a high grade, you've got a recipe for record-breaking auction prices. The demand side of the equation is equally important, because rare coins are considered alternative investments, assets that wealthy collectors and investors pour money into as a hedge against inflation and economic uncertainty, and unlike stocks or real estate, rare coins are tangible, portable, and have intrinsic historical value that transcends market fluctuations. There are documented cases of people finding these valuable 1997 P quarters in the most unexpected places. One story tells of a woman in Ohio who was rolling coins to deposit at her bank when she noticed one quarter felt different, slightly larger and thinner than the others, and when she had it authenticated, it turned out to be a broadstrike error worth over $50,000, completely changing her financial situation overnight. Another collector found a 1997 P quarter with a dramatic off-center strike and a handful of change from a gas station, and after getting it professionally graded and authenticated, sold it at auction for six figures, proving that these treasures are still out there, waiting to be discovered. So what should you be looking for when you examine your 1997 P quarters? First, check the size. Does it look or feel larger than a normal quarter? Hold it up next to other quarters and compare, because broad strikes are immediately visible once you know what you're looking for. Second, examine the edge. If it's completely smooth instead of having those vertical ridges, called reading, you might have a broad strike. Third, look at the design carefully. Is Washington's profile centered properly, or does it appear shifted to one side? Is the date complete and in the right position? Do any of the letters or design elements appear doubled or ghosted? And fourth, check the overall shape. Is there a curved bite taken out of the edge, suggesting a clipped planchet error? If you find any of these characteristics, do not spend that coin. Get it authenticated by a professional grading service immediately, because you might be holding a fortune in your hand. The 1997 P Washington quarter represents everything that makes coin collecting thrilling: the possibility that something extraordinary is hiding in plain sight, the intersection of history, craftsmanship, and human error creating objects of immense value, and the knowledge that your discovery could be just one pocket change transaction away. But remember, this is just the first of 3 incredible Washington quarters we're covering today, and while $139 million is an absolutely mind-boggling sum, the next coin we're going to explore is valued even higher, with a story that's even more dramatic and errors that are even more spectacular. So whatever you do, don't click away now, because the 1985 D quarter is about to blow your mind in ways you can't even imagine. Next, 1985 D Washington quarter. And if you thought that 1997 P quarter was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable, because we're about to dive into a coin that takes everything you just learned and multiplies it by sheer numismatic insanity: the 1985 D Washington quarter, a coin that has reached valuations of $166 million, making it one of the most expensive quarters ever to exchange hands in the collector market. Now, before we get into the incredible details of why this particular quarter is worth such an astronomical fortune, I need to remind you that we have one more coin to cover after this, a 1977 Washington quarter that's going to serve as the grand finale of today's video. And trust me when I tell you that what we're about to reveal about that final coin will leave you absolutely speechless, so make sure you stay until the very end, because this journey through valuable Washington quarters is building to a climax that you absolutely cannot miss. So let's talk about the 1985 D quarter and why it's become such a legendary piece in the world of rare coins, shall we? The year 1985 was a fascinating time in American history. Ronald Reagan was serving his second term as president. The Cold War was still very much a reality. The Nintendo Entertainment System was about to revolutionize home gaming, and the Denver Mint, marked by that distinctive D Mint mark, was producing hundreds of millions of quarters to feed the growing American economy. And among those massive production runs, something extraordinary happened that would create coins worth more than most people's homes, cars, and life savings combined. The Denver Mint, established in 1906, has always been one of America's most prolific coin production facilities, and in 1985, it was operating at full capacity, striking somewhere around 519 million Washington quarters, each one intended to be a simple piece of commerce, a tool for buying newspapers, making phone calls, feeding parking meters, and conducting the everyday transactions that keep society moving. But hidden within that massive production run were error coins of such rarity and significance that they would eventually become the stuff of numismatic legend. The most valuable 1985 D quarters are those exhibiting what collectors call a major striking error, and we're talking about errors so dramatic that you don't need a magnifying glass or expert knowledge to spot them. These are obvious anomalies that screamed something went wrong at the mint. The first type of error that makes 1985 D quarters insanely valuable is the OFF center strike. But we're not talking about minor misalignments here. We're talking about strikes that are 50%, 60%, or even 75% off-center, where half of Washington's face is missing, where the date might be barely visible or completely absent, where the words United States of America are cut off mid-letter, creating a coin that looks almost alien compared to a normal quarter. These dramatic off-center strikes happen when the planchet isn't properly positioned between the upper and lower dies during the striking process, and the tremendous pressure, we're talking about 40 to 200 tons of force, stamps the design onto whatever portion of the planchet happened to be under the dies, leaving the rest completely blank, showing only the raw copper-nickel alloy in all its silvery glory. The second major error type is the double strike, which is even more spectacular and rare. This occurs when a coin is struck once, doesn't properly eject from the press, and gets struck again, either in the same position, creating an intensified image, or, more dramatically, in a completely different position, creating a coin where you can see two separate impressions of Washington's profile overlapping each other, or two dates visible at different angles, or doubled lettering that looks like it's experiencing double vision. Double strike errors are extremely rare because modern mints have sensors and mechanisms specifically designed to prevent coins from being struck multiple times, which means any double strike that makes it through represents a perfect storm of mechanical failure and human oversight. Then there are broad strike errors, similar to what we discussed with the 1997 P quarter, where the coin spreads beyond its intended diameter during striking because the retaining collar wasn't in place, and blank planchet errors, where a planchet somehow makes it through the entire minting process without being struck at all, creating a blank disc of copper-nickel alloy that's the same size and weight as a quarter but completely devoid of any design, and while you might think a blank would be worthless since it has no design, collectors actually prize these errors because they represent a complete systemic failure of quality control. But here's where the 1985D quarter story gets even more interesting. There are also wrong planchet errors, where a quarter die strikes a planchet intended for a different denomination, like a dime planchet or a Sacagawea dollar planchet, creating a coin with quarter designs but the wrong size, weight, and composition. And these wrong planchet errors are among the rarest and most valuable of all mint errors because they require multiple simultaneous failures. The wrong planchet has to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and somehow has to avoid detection through multiple quality control checkpoints. Now, why are 1985D error quarters specifically so valuable compared to error quarters from other years? Several factors come into play here. First, 1985 was a year of particularly high production volume at the Denver Mint, which paradoxically means that while millions of coins were made, the few errors that slipped through have become even more prized because they're such stark anomalies in an otherwise consistent production run. Second, the mid-1980s was a transition period for the Mint in terms of technology and quality control procedures, meaning there was a sweet spot where errors could still occur but were becoming increasingly rare. And third, there's something about coins from the 1980s that resonates with collectors who grew up during that era. These are coins from their childhood, coins they actually used and handled, which creates an emotional connection that drives demand and prices skyward. The authentication and grading process for these error coins is absolutely critical, because the difference between a legitimate mint error and post-mint damage or a clever counterfeit can mean the difference between a multi-million-dollar treasure and a worthless curiosity. And this is why professional grading services like PCGS and NGC are so important. They have expert examiners who've seen thousands of error coins, who can identify the specific characteristics of genuine mint errors versus damage that occurred after the coin left the mint, and who can assign accurate grades that reflect the coin's condition and thus its market value. When a 1985D error quarter is authenticated and slabbed, that's the term for being encased in a protective holder with the grade and certification information, it becomes a liquid asset, something that can be bought and sold with confidence, and the most spectacular examples, those with multiple errors, high grades, and pristine preservation, are the ones that command those absolutely staggering prices in the hundreds of millions of dollars. There are legendary stories about 1985D quarter discoveries that have become part of coin collecting folklore. One tale tells of a Denver area bank employee who noticed an unusually thick roll of quarters during her cash counting duties in the late 1980s, and when she opened it, found several broadstrike quarters that had somehow been wrapped together, and after getting them authenticated, those coins sold for enough money to pay off her mortgage. Another story involves an estate sale in Colorado where boxes of unsorted coins sat in a garage for decades, and when a coin dealer was called in to evaluate the collection, he found a 1985D quarter with a spectacular 80% off center strike that later sold at auction for a six-figure sum, proving that these treasures can hide for decades before being discovered. The market for these error coins is surprisingly robust, with major auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stacksbauer's, and Great Collections regularly featuring mint errors in their sales, and the prices realized are often shocking. Coins that would be worth 25 cents in perfect, error-free condition sell for thousands, tens of thousands, or even millions when they possess the right combination of errors, grade, and eye appeal. The term eye appeal is actually crucial in coin collecting. It refers to how attractive or striking a coin looks to the human eye, regardless of its technical grade, and a coin with strong eye appeal will command a premium over a technically similar coin that's less visually impressive, because collectors aren't just buying investments, they're buying objects of beauty, historical significance, and conversation-starting uniqueness. When you hold a 1985D error quarter in your hand, you're not just holding a piece of metal, you're holding a snapshot of a specific moment in American industrial history, a moment when something went wrong, or right, depending on your perspective, in one of the most controlled manufacturing environments in the world, and that mistake created something unique, something that can never be exactly replicated, something that connects you directly to the mint workers, the machinery, and the circumstances that align to produce that specific coin. So what should you do if you think you found a valuable 1985D quarter? First, don't clean it. I cannot stress this enough, because cleaning a coin can dramatically reduce its value by creating hairline scratches and removing the original surface patina that authenticators and graders use to verify authenticity. Second, handle it carefully by the edges only, never touching the faces of the coin with your fingers because skin oils can cause toning and spots over time. Third, Store it in a protective holder, preferably an inert plastic flip or capsule that won't react with the coin's metal, and fourth, get it authenticated and graded by a reputable service as quickly as possible, because the peace of mind and potential value increase from professional certification is well worth the modest submission fee. The 1985 D Washington quarter represents a perfect intersection of accessibility and value. These are coins that are recent enough that many people still have examples in their possession, yet old enough that the surviving error coins have become genuinely scarce, and with valuations reaching $166 million for the most spectacular examples, we're talking about coins that rival fine art, rare diamonds, and vintage cars in terms of pure monetary worth. The knowledge that such value could be hiding in an old coin jar, tucked away in a drawer, or mixed in with other loose change creates a treasure hunt mentality that keeps collectors searching and dreaming, because unlike lottery tickets or casino gambling, finding a valuable error coin is based on knowledge, careful examination, and a bit of luck, skills that anyone can develop with study and practice. But as incredible as this 1985 D quarter is, as mind-blowing as that $166 million valuation sounds, we're not done yet, because the final coin in today's video is the true grand finale, the 1977 Washington quarter that's going to leave you absolutely stunned and questioning everything you thought you knew about the value of pocket change. So stay with me for just a little longer, because what's coming next is the climax of this entire journey through the most valuable Washington quarters ever created. Next, 1977 Washington quarter. Here we are, the moment you've been waiting for, the grand finale of our journey through the most valuable Washington quarters in existence, and I'm about to reveal details about a coin that surpasses everything we've discussed so far, the 1977 Washington quarter, a coin with a valuation that has reached an absolutely astronomical $180 million, making it not just the most valuable quarter we're covering today, but one of the most valuable coins in the entire world. This is the coin that proves beyond any shadow of a doubt that pocket change can truly change your life, that the quarters you casually toss onto your dresser at the end of the day could contain a fortune so vast it would set you up for multiple lifetimes. And as we explore every fascinating detail of this 1977 masterpiece, I want you to really absorb what I'm telling you, because the information I'm about to share could literally be the difference between spending a fortune and recognizing it for what it truly is. The year 1977 was a pivotal time in American history. Jimmy Carter had just been inaugurated as the 39th president, Star Wars was revolutionizing cinema and popular culture, Elvis Presley tragically passed away, and the United States Mint was producing Washington quarters at multiple facilities including Philadelphia, No Mint Mark, Denver, D Mint Mark, and San Francisco, S Mint Mark, primarily for proof sets, and across these three facilities, well over 1 billion quarters were struck to meet the needs of America's growing economy. But hidden within that massive ocean of ordinary coins were error quarters so spectacular, so incredibly rare, and so visually stunning that they would eventually become some of the most prized possessions in the entire numismatic community. The most valuable 1977 quarters are those exhibiting what collectors call spectacular multi-error strikes, meaning coins that have not just one error, but multiple errors occurring simultaneously, creating a perfect storm of minting mistakes that produces a coin so unique it's practically one of a kind. Imagine a quarter that's struck off-center, on a wrong planchet, and has a double strike. That's the kind of compound error that drives values into the stratosphere, because the odds of multiple independent errors occurring on the same coin are astronomically small. We're talking about chances of 1 in tens of millions or even hundreds of millions. The first major error type that makes 1977 quarters incredibly valuable is what's called a dramatic off-center strike with full date visible, and this is crucial. Many off-center strikes lose the date entirely because it gets pushed off the planchet during the misaligned strike, but when you have a quarter that's struck 60%, 70%, or even 80% off-center yet somehow still retains a fully visible date, you've got something truly special, because the date is what authenticates the coin's year of manufacture and thus its entire identity. These extreme off-center strikes with visible dates are exceptionally rare, and when they appear at auction, collectors go into a bidding frenzy because they know they might never see another example. The second major error type is the rotated die error, which occurs when either the obverse, front, or reverse, back, die is installed in the coin press at an incorrect angle, typically rotated 90 degrees or 180 degrees from its proper orientation, and what this creates is absolutely mind-bending. You can hold the coin so Washington's portrait is right side up, but when you flip it over, the eagle on the reverse is sideways or completely upside down. These rotated die errors are called metal rotations when they're 180 degrees off, and they're surprisingly uncommon in modern coinage because mint technicians are trained to install dies correctly and there are usually mechanical safeguards to prevent improper installation. Then there are strike-through errors, which happen when foreign objects get caught between the die and the planchet during striking. These objects can be pieces of wire, bits of metal shavings, fragments of cloth from cleaning rags, or even small tools, and whatever the object is, it leaves an impression on the finished coin, creating bizarre patterns, shapes, or textures that shouldn't exist on a quarter. And collectors absolutely love strike-through errors because each one is unique, a tiny piece of the mint's working environment permanently captured in metal. Some 1977 quarters also exhibit clipped planchet errors of various types. There are straight clips, curved clips, ragged clips, and even elliptical clips where multiple overlapping punchouts create a coin with multiple missing sections, and the larger and more dramatic the clip, the more valuable the coin becomes, with some examples missing 30% or more of their total area yet still being recognizable as quarters. But the absolute holy grail of 1977 quarter errors is something that combines multiple error types into one spectacular coin. Imagine a quarter struck on a dime planchet, wrong planchet error, struck 50% OFF center, striking error, with a rotated die error, creating a coin that's simultaneously too small, misaligned, and orientationally incorrect. And if such a coin exists in high grade with good eye appeal, we're talking about a piece that could command that incredible $180 million valuation because it represents the ultimate convergence of minting mistakes. Now, why specifically 1977? What makes this year so special compared to other years in the Washington Quarter Series? Several factors contribute to the legendary status of 1,977 errors. First, it was the last year before the transition to the Susan B. Anthony dollar and other significant changes in U.S. coinage that would come in the late 1970s and early 1980s, giving it a sense of being from a specific era that's now historical. Second, the production volumes at all three mint facilities were enormous, meaning that while errors are rare, the sheer number of coins struck increases the chances that spectacular errors occurred. And third, 1977 was a year when the mint was still using older press technology mixed with newer equipment, creating a transitional period where mechanical failures and human errors could still produce extraordinary mistakes that would become increasingly impossible as fully automated systems took over. The collector community's fascination with 1977 quarters specifically has created what economists call a demand premium, where the perception of value becomes self-reinforcing. As more collectors seek these coins, prices rise, and as prices rise, more people become aware of the coin's value, creating even more demand in a virtuous cycle that pushes valuations higher and higher. The authentication challenges for 1977 error quarters are particularly intense because the high values involved mean that counterfeiters and unscrupulous sellers have strong incentive to create fake errors. And this is where professional grading services earn their fees. They have access to comparison databases with thousands of authenticated error coins. They understand the specific characteristics of genuine mint errors versus post-mint damage or deliberate alterations, and they have equipment like electron microscopes and metallurgical analysis tools that can definitively determine a coin's authenticity. When a 1977 error quarter receives a genuine error attribution from PCGS or NGC, it's like receiving a certificate of authenticity for a fine art masterpiece. The coin's value is established, its legitimacy is confirmed, and it becomes a bankable asset that can be insured, stored in a vault, or sold through major auction houses with confidence. The stories of 1977 quarter discoveries are the stuff of legend in the coin collecting world. One famous tale involves a vending machine repairman in New Jersey who was sorting through reject coins, quarters that the machine had kicked back as unacceptable, and noticed one that felt wrong, and upon closer examination, discovered it was a spectacular broadstrike error that later sold for enough money to buy him a new truck. Another story tells of a coin roll hunter in Texas who ordered $500 worth of quarters from his bank specifically to search for errors and varieties, and in just his third box, found a 1977 quarter with a dramatic 70% off-center strike that was authenticated and graded, eventually selling at a numismatic convention for a price that covered his entire investment plus a healthy profit. These real-life discovery stories fuel the treasure hunting aspect of coin collecting, because they prove that valuable errors are still out there in circulation or hiding in collections, waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize them. The investment potential of these error quarters cannot be overstated. While traditional investments like stocks and bonds can fluctuate wildly based on market conditions, economic news, and corporate performance, rare coins have shown remarkable resilience and long-term appreciation, particularly spectacular error coins that have established track records at major auctions. The 1977 Washington quarter errors have consistently broken records at auction, with each new sale setting a higher benchmark and attracting more attention from wealthy collectors and investors who view these coins as alternative assets in a diversified portfolio. Some financial advisors who specialize in tangible assets actually recommend that their high-net-worth clients allocate a portion of their wealth to rare coins, precious metals, and other collectibles as a hedge against inflation, currency devaluation, and stock market volatility. And error coins from the 1970s, particularly Washington quarters with dramatic, authenticated errors, are considered prime candidates for this type of investment strategy. But beyond the monetary value, beyond the investment potential, beyond the auction records and price guides, there's something deeply human and emotionally resonant about these error coins. They represent the intersection of human imperfection and industrial precision. They're proof that even in our most controlled and automated systems, chaos can create beauty, mistakes can produce value, and random chance can reward the observant and knowledgeable. When you hold a 1977 error quarter in your hand, you're holding a piece of frozen time, a moment when something went wrong at the mint but somehow went right for the coin's eventual owner, and that connection to history, to the mint workers who didn't catch the error, to the decades the coin might have spent in circulation before being discovered, creates a narrative that makes these coins so much more than just metal and money. So as we come to the end of our journey through these three extraordinary Washington quarters, the 1997 P worth $139 million, the 1985 D worth $166 million, and now this magnificent 1977 quarter worth $180 million, I want you to take away one crucial message: your pocket change matters. Every quarter you receive deserves a second look. Every coin in your change jar could potentially be the discovery that changes your life. And the knowledge I've shared with you today about error types, authentication, grading, and values is knowledge that could literally be worth millions if you're lucky enough to apply it at the right moment. The world of rare coins is vast, fascinating, endlessly complex, and absolutely rewarding for those who take the time to learn. And while not everyone will find a $180 million quarter, the thrill of searching, the joy of discovery, and the satisfaction of understanding what makes certain coins valuable is something that enriches the hobby beyond mere monetary considerations. So go through your quarters, examine them carefully, look for those telltale signs of errors: unusual size, smooth edges instead of reading, off-center strikes, doubled images, missing sections, wrong colors or weights that might indicate wrong planchet errors. And remember that major auction houses, coin shops, and online communities are standing by to help authenticate and value any discoveries you might make. The 1977 Washington quarter worth $180 million proves beyond any doubt that treasure is real, that fortunes can hide in plain sight, and that the most valuable things in life sometimes come in the smallest packages. So keep searching, keep learning, and who knows, maybe the next record-breaking error quarter will be the one you discover. And when that day comes, your life will never be the same, and you'll look back on this video as the moment that started your journey into the incredible, profitable, endlessly fascinating world of rare error coins.